Last week, Zimbabwe's main opposition party, the Movement for Democratic Change, launched the Reload policy document, which they described as the key to providing solutions to the Zimbabwean economy. In this edition of our video, I'm going to be joined by youth leaders from both ZANU-PF and MDC to help us unpack and get their perspectives on how this document is going to have an impact on Zimbabwe's economy. My name is Transitional from State of the Nation, and I'm going to be your host in this show. Okay, Mr. Obey, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show. So my name is Transitional, and joining me today is ZANU-PF's Deputy Secretary for the Youth League. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay, last week the opposition party launched the Reload document, which they are saying provides the key to solving Zimbabwe's economic crisis. So as a youth leader from the ruling party, what is the general perception? What are your views towards that document? Your party launched the Reload document last week, which is described as the key to solving Zimbabwe's economic crisis. What is the general perception of the young people in your party with regards to that document?
Okay, thank you very much, comrade, for inviting me. Indeed, we launched our document termed the Reload. And what it speaks to, it is a roadmap to where we all want to be as the Zimbabwean nation. You understand that you are in a crisis, you are in a state of crisis, and whenever a nation is faced with a crisis, there is need to have a solution. And the Reload is the solution to the people's happiness. What it entails is that you have 5 steps that you need to take as a movement or as a nation united together, which will then lead to a free and fair election at the end of the day. Because what you are facing as a nation is a process where you contest in elections, but then all the outcomes become contested as well. So we want to create a scenario whereby elections are contested and the results are not then contested. We need to contest an election, then we bring out results that are acceptable by everyone. But given the current status quo, we don't have that opportunity because we believe, and it is understandable for everyone who dares to look at the scenario, that we don't have a free and fair mechanism for each and every election that we go to. So Reload entails that the first step that we need to take is a response to the crisis and also as a response to the previous election of 2018. We need to start with putting what we call political and diplomatic pressure. And that will then lead to what we call a proper dialogue.
It's very disappointing to see very educated lawyers. I'm now doubting their education from the MDC Alliance coming up with such a document claiming to be, providing solutions to your economic problem. To start with, that's not a policy document. That's a political document that is meant to try and put pressure on ZANU-PF to accommodate MDC Alliance, which lost elections. I'll tell you why I'm saying that. When you look at the Reload document, as they call it, I'm not so sure what are they reloading, but there are no any economic issues or policies that are coming out of that document. When you talk of providing solutions to our economic problems, we should look at how do they think we must deal with issues of production, how do they think that we must deal with issues of unemployment, how do they think that we must deal with the issues of inflation, how do they think that we must deal with issues of other economic issues that are pertinent in our country. But I didn't see any. They are saying, firstly, that they want to increase piling pressure on ZANU-PF. Just that. ZANU-PF is not just easy. It's a machine, and it's not easy for the wind to pile pressure on a machine because you cannot move it. So ZANU-PF will never succumb to any form of pressure which is unproductive and which is unprogress. That's the first thing.
And you know what? ZANU-PF on the other end is doing something that it call a political actors dialogue, something. Pollard. I can't even look into it because it's much less to the interest of the people. What they entail is not something that we aspire to have. We need a proper dialogue where there's one person who becomes the convener, who's also independent in nature, not the current status quo where we have one player wanting to be the referee at the same time. So from the political pressure and diplomatic pressure, we then have, we need to have a dialogue, a people-centered dialogue, where the issues that are facing the people of Zimbabwe can then be tabled on a certain table with equal opportunities to address and also be heard.
I don't understand what type of dialogue they are looking for, because dialogue is there. It's up to them to join it or not to. It's up to them to participate or not to. They are actually wasting time, because to them, they think that if they pressurize ZANU-PF, then they will be invited as special guests to the dialogue, which is something that will never happen. Now, to talk of a transition or transitional mechanism to be implemented in our country, that's a joke. Is there any reason why we should have such a thing? And if MDC Alliance were very confident that they won the elections, why go for a transitional mechanism instead of just saying we want to claim our power because we won the election? It is because they are used to negotiated government through a national transitional mechanism. What for? Who needs that and for what purpose? It is not fair and unreasonable for MDC Alliance to think that what they think is what Zimbabwean people think. And it is time for Chamisa to realize that time is running out. At least President Mnangagwa's door is still open. He must rush and get in and talk to the old man before he loses it. Otherwise, this whole issue of the reload, transitional, whatever, doesn't work, and we don't need it. Who needs that?
From that dialogue, we believe that we now need to have what you call a National Transition Authority, a platform where people's concerns from all concerned parties, in this case the MDC and all the political players, then you have an opportunity to table their issues. Then the issues need to be taken into consideration, leading then to a process which we believe will be a process for the reform agenda.
And then they talk of reforms after that. President Mnangagwa is already implementing a lot of reforms. Look at what happened when we were done away with IPA, certain legislation that is not good for our country, that is not good for our people. Those are the reforms that we are looking at. Look at what is happening in the government, look at what's happening, the introduction now of the Anti-Corruption Commission, the new commissioners to fight corruption. Those are the necessary reforms. We have our own new currency as a country. Those are the reforms good for our economy. And there's reforms that aim to make sure that as opposition they get into power. So that document is a document that was made by a few individuals who are trying to get into power through a back door.
Well, it's quite laughable when you hear some individuals in the circles of ZANU-PF saying we are an arrogant party. We are not arrogant, but what we are simply saying is that they don't have a local standard to be calling for a dialogue, because as all things being equal, they don't have anything of value that they can use to say, let's come for a dialogue. I think I've indicated this earlier, to say we cannot have a player who also wants to be a referee. Emmerson Mnangagwa is not a legitimate president. So if you are to talk about dialogue, he must not be anywhere closer to that thing called dialogue. A dialogue that is proper, that is people-centered, must be conducted, and as I have said, mediated by someone who is clearly independent. And in our view, that cannot be done by any other person whom Mnangagwa can prescribe. He has no local standard to prescribe the direction and the nature of the dialogue. The people must be the prescribers of the dialogue that we want, not Emmerson Mnangagwa. Because as far as we are concerned, he is also an individual who has a case to answer with regards to the previous electoral outcome. And that needs to be addressed. So for as long as we don't reach an understanding on the proper outcome of the previous elections, Emmerson Mnangagwa has no local standard to be calling for dialogue.
And for them to talk about the fact that they want to address the legitimacy issue, what legitimacy issue? If we can talk of legitimate issues, we should be talking about the internal politics, where Chamisa is accused of, grabbing power from Tsvangirai on his deathbed and also pushing out others like Kupe and stuff. That's a real legitimate issue. But as far as we're concerned as a country, we don't have any legitimate issue. We went to elections. First, it was ZEC announced that ZANU-PF won, and they said no, ZANU-PF didn't win elections. We went to the Constitutional Court, and then the same thing was done. Surely, what else do they want?
And I want to take you back to the document as well. If you read it properly, we said this national transition mechanism must be involving all spheres of life. In the business, the sport, whatever stakeholder that you might think of needs to be involved within the framework of the national transition mechanism. And second thing that you also need to take note, we actually speak it very well in the document to say, going forward, all the executive powers must then be collapsed. Then we have this national transition mechanism to be taking a charge of the governance, so that we are at equal level. We cannot have an opportunity whereby ZANU-PF still claims to be the ones who are leading this nation. We all know that they did not win any election, the previous election. So we are saying this is going to be a setup which does not necessarily mean a government of national unity, but it's just a platform where views are then taken equally, so that you can also lead to a reformation agenda. As it stands, we have a selfish government on this end, whereas when we want to say something at the opposition political party, MDC, those things are not taken seriously because it's a battle of interest. But when we have this national transition mechanism drawn from all spheres, all stakeholders involved, but of course with MDC inside, we can then have a platform where our views are taken seriously. Then we lead to a process of reformation. We also then ask a question to say, what will you do as the young people? Of course, we utilize our constitutional rights to keep on mounting pressure on a failing regime, because we cannot then fold our hands when the people are suffering. So we always have to find a solution. And the solution is anchored in our hands. The solution is anchored through the constitutional rights, which we then pursue to put pressure on them to realize that the suffering needs to be brought to an end. But the only way to bring the suffering to an end is to come on the table. Whether they like it, they need to be coming on the table. Kicking and screaming, they need to be on the table so that we can find a solution to save the people of Zimbabwe from the crisis that they are facing. So, I mean, there are no two ways. There are no two ways. ZANU-PF is going to come on the negotiating table. In fact, we are going to bring them on the negotiating table.
Their crisis that they are talking about, it's a creation of them as a political organization because they are desperate. They don't know where to fit. They are becoming irrelevant day by day. By the time we get to 2021, they'll be very much irrelevant because they are sunk in politics, forgetting that there are other things that the Zimbabwean people are looking up to.
No, wherever you go, people will be asking for signal. And if you want to be honest, you've also heard some youth saying they also need a signal. So this is the signal that we've given to the people of Zimbabwe. They're going to take action, give a lot of pressure on the current regime led by Emmerson Mnangagwa. They need to understand that the people are fed up. I mean, the sentiments from the young people of Zimbabwe that they need this ZANU-PF gone as soon as yesterday. So I actually feel that we are late with regards to taking this action. What we need is to unite as the young people, utilize our constitutional rights to ensure that pressure is mounted, a new governance framework is then formed to save the youth as well from the suffering that they are facing.
There is confidence in the government of President Mnangagwa, but MDC people have no confidence in President Mnangagwa and his government. There are two different things. Citizens do not refer to political party membership. MDC alliance, they don't have confidence in. In fact, it's not all of them actually. Some they do have confidence. They are very confident in the president, but because they fear their leadership, they want to appear otherwise. But the citizens of this country, they've got confidence in the leadership of President Mnangagwa and his government.